to work a knit two together. This is probably the most basic way to decrease your knitting, the one that you're most likely to encounter first, and it is a right leaning decrease. If you're new to knitting, don't worry too much yet what I mean by right leaning decrease. We'll come back to that. Two together is usually abbreviated as K, the number 2, and then TOG. So knit two together. And it is effectively what it sounds like. You're going to knit 2 stitches together as though they're 1 stitch. So to do that, you're going to work to wherever you want to put your decrease. You just practice on a swatch, or if you're working a project, follow the pattern until you actually get to your decrease stitches. And then what you're going to do is look at the stitches on your left needle. So counting in from the tip, we have 1, 2 stitches. We're going to join those 2 stitches together. And when you knit, usually you go from front to back through your stitch like this. What we're going to do is treat these 2 stitches as though they're 1. I'm going to bring my right needle over both stitches, and then I'm going to go through this second stitch on the needle and then the first stitch on the needle from front to back, just as I normally do when I work a knit stitch. I don't want to insert my needle all the way through the second stitch because it's going to be tricky to then get through the first one on the needle. So I'm going to go just a tiny bit into that one and then from front to back into the next one. So I've sort of stacked them on my needles together like this. They're grouped together. And from then on, I'm going to treat them as a single stitch. So I'm going to wrap my yarn. If you're a continental knitter and you're picking the yarn, you're holding it in your left hand, then you'll pick it as you normally do. Whichever method you use, you're going to bring the yarn through both stitches and then slide both of those loops, the old stitches, off the left needle. So let me show you that again. So the right needle comes kind of to the left over both stitches into the second stitch on the needle, and then the first one, yarn around, wrap the yarn, pull it through, and slide both stitches off. And this is easier to see when you have a column of knit two togethers stacked on top of each other. But what I mean when I say it's a right leaning decrease is that it kind of slants over to the right. My second stitch on my left needle ends up kind of stacked on top of what was the first stitch on the left needle. That's the stitch to the right. And the way that that stacking happens is that that sort of top stitch ends up kind of tipping sideways to join up with its buddy. And it's that sideways tip that controls the lean of the decrease. And what we can do with decreases is that we can pair right and left leaning decreases together to create a sort of symmetrical visual effect. And there's lots of ways that you can use that shaping. You'll see it on sweaters where you might use knit two togethers on one side of your sweater when you're shaping maybe the armhole, or if you have a raglan style. And then you'll use SSKs, which is probably the most common left leaning decrease, on the other side, and those will kind of lean in towards each other and create a nice symmetrical effect. You can see here that when I work a series of knit two togethers stacked on top of each other, that you can create a sort of diagonal line that leans towards the right. And what you would do to create this is it helps to put a marker in. So if I put a marker here and then I decrease, I work my knit two together before that marker on every decrease row. I think this is decreasing every 4th row. Then those knit two togethers will stack on top of each other, and the sort of column that's on the top of each decrease will stack up and make this nice diagonal line that leans towards the right. On this swatch, I've also got a column of SSKs, which is a left leaning decrease, and you can see how these can be used to create shaping that is kind of symmetrical and mirrored. And the next technique that you might want to learn is the slip slip knit or SSK decrease, so that you can create mirrored decreases. If you're interested in learning more about knitting, don't forget to subscribe to my channel where I share lots of tutorials for all levels. And I also have patterns and ebooks available on my website, isolde.com, and on Ravelry. Let me know how you got on with your knit to togethers in the comments down below, and I'll see you soon for our next tutorial.